I recently read The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning by Margareta Magnusson, and I had the idea to compare it to Marie Kondo's method of organizing, detailed in The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, and add in my own thoughts on decluttering and organization. So in this video, I'm walking you through a comparison of the two methods based on reading both titles and drawing from my own personal and professional experience. It's like a mini book review. So let's get into it. If you've never heard of either book, here's a quick summary of each one. The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning is a book written by Margareta Magnusson, a Swedish artist. The premise of the book is to declutter your entire home before you die, preferably before you're 65, so that you're in the best health to do it. It reads like a memoir / how-to guide to part ways with a lifetime of clutter. But the most important point of the book is to unburden your loved ones from being responsible for your stuff when you die. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up details the KonMari method, named after Marie Kondo, who popularized the idea of decluttering with the filter of joy. She says, keep and retain only those items that spark joy in your life. And if we haven't yet met, I'm Sandy, home organization educator, teaching on all things organization. Here are the most noteworthy similarities and differences between these two methods. For a decluttering book, Swedish Death Cleaning isn't written in a very organized manner compared to The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. But there are some rules and guidelines each author suggests for how to start. For Swedish Death Cleaning, Margareta Magnusson says this is the order of things when someone dies. Mind you, this is based on her experience of cleaning house after her own mother-in-law, and husband passed away. Number 1, hire an official valuer, appraisal of your things. Number 2, put things up for sale. Number 3, ask friends and neighbors to come over and grab things. Number 4, go room to room and make note of what is left with a note on what to do with each item. Number 5, give yourself a time frame. The author gives a suggestion of a week. Number 6, take a break after each room / space. Marie has 2 sets of guidelines introduced in her book. The first is the rules of tidying up and then the order of decluttering. Rules of tidying up. Number 1, commit yourself to tidying up. Number 2, imagine your ideal lifestyle. Number 3, finish discarding first. Number 4, tidy by category, not location. Number 5, follow the right order, referencing the categories. Number 6, ask yourself if it sparks joy. Order of decluttering: clothes, books, papers, miscellaneous, sentimental items. Because Marie's book has an order of decluttering, I'll be using that order for the basis of my comparison. So the first category starts with clothing. Magnusson and Marie Kondo recommend starting with clothing, but the process of decluttering is approached differently. Margareta recommends 2 piles. Pile 1 is for clothes you want to keep, and pile 2 is for clothes you want to part ways with. Both agree to let go of clothes that don't fit in the moment. Marie Kondo goes further into decluttering by introducing the concept of using joy as the barometer to keep or discard, whereas Margareta is more about utility and function. This is the most significant difference. Margareta even recommends taking hours to go through the pile of clothes to see what you can do without. Marie would never, because her method emphasizes retaining for joy rather than going without. One really important distinction is that Margareta emphasizes choosing one category of things to start that is the easiest to declutter. This is not Marie Kondo's approach. In the KonMari method, there is a very specific order to decluttering, no matter the level of difficulty, which is clothes, books, papers, kimono, miscellaneous items, and sentimental items. My personal take that I adopted once I departed from the KonMari method of organizing is to declutter based on ease, like Margareta. For many, clothing is not the easiest category, and for good reason. Clothing is closely tied to the body image, body dysmorphia, and how we feel about ourselves in the clothing. Confronting all these things while decluttering clothing makes it extremely difficult as a first category when you're just getting started. So I'm Team Margaretta here, and I recommend decluttering based on what is easiest for you, which means choose the category that has the least amount of emotional friction and resistance for you. Just like with clothing, there are similarities and differences in their approach to decluttering books and papers. Marie's perspective is to let books go that you haven't read yet, with the rule that you should read books right away and soon after receiving them. She said the moment you first encounter a particular book is the right time to read it. It's the opposite with Margaretta. She recommends keeping books you haven't read. She says, I only keep books that I still haven't read or books that I keep returning to. Where they both agree is keeping books that they keep coming back to. Marie calls these books part of the Book Hall of Fame, including her favorite of Alice in Wonderland, which she has reread many times since grade 1. My views and approach to books is to first get them from the library. This saves money and only temporarily clutters up your home. Then if you love the book and want to use it for reference, go ahead and purchase to keep a physical copy in your home. As a general practice, I don't have physical copies of books in my home that I don't love, but I do keep ones that function as a reference or as a resource. For papers, their approach is different simply because Margaretta doesn't have much to say on the topic. Both agree not to save greeting cards unless they are sentimental in nature. Margaretta says, I do not save the few and rare letters and cards I get anymore. As soon as I have answered and thanked the writers for them, they disappear into my shredder. The only other noteworthy advice she gives in Swedish Death Cleaning is to think twice before adding staples to your papers because of the headache it causes when it comes to shredding them. Marie, on the other hand, has a long list of recommendations when it comes to papers. She suggests 3 piles when decluttering papers. Number 1, currently in use. This is the action items like paying bills or reviewing bank statements. Number 2, needed for a limited period. For example, these are contracts or passports. Number 3 is the stuff that you're going to keep forever, like birth certificates. But her overall approach is to discard all papers. For me personally, I lean closer to Marie's approach with paper. You don't really need all that paper, and once I adopted using Evernote for my digital note-taking needs, I'm far more organized with my papers. And if you want more tips on decluttering papers, check out the description in this video for a link to my tips and recommendations. Moving on to the kimono/miscellaneous category. Within the KonMari method, the kimono category includes anything that isn't clothes, books, papers, and sentimental in nature. I'm finding it difficult to compare the everything else category between these two methods, mostly because 1, everything else is too broad, and 2, Marie talks about this category in detail while Margaretta does not. To simplify Marie's approach, she recommends to discard everything, retaining only the items that spark joy. Margaretta's approach to death cleaning is guided by not leaving items behind for your loved ones to deal with after your passing. If you're on the fence about Swedish death cleaning, Margaretta shares a practical reason you might want to consider. How would you feel if your friends and family came across your secret items after your death? Margaretta recommends getting rid of it because there's no sense in saving things that will shock or upset your family after you are gone. In her book, she details items related to vices or secrets you plan to take to your grave, like arsenic, yes, it's in the book, cigarettes hidden in the back of cabinets, your grandfather's drawer full of ladies' underwear, empty gin and whiskey bottles tucked away with their favorite shot glasses. She even specifically calls out personal toys. She says, save your favorite, but throw away the other 15. And as for Marie, she'll say to make your discarding decision using the joy filter. In this case, if having your friends and family see your toys and vices is not joyful to you, then get rid of it. Because the everything else category is so vast, Marie went on to write her second book, Spark Joy, which reads like a manual for how to handle many items within each of the categories. My personal approach to decluttering goes well beyond joy because joy is difficult to quantify or define for most people. If you find it difficult to resonate with the idea of decluttering with joy, you're not alone. That's why I expand on the criteria for how to approach decluttering with the different set of questions. Curious about the list of questions? Head to the description of this video to grab a link for it. To bring you to the final category, comparison of sentimental items, here is a quick story time to tie it all together. At age 5, my family moved from one apartment to the next. Each series of moves was unremarkable, except this time, because we stayed in the apartment for a while, it was long enough to accumulate beloved toys and games. Our young family of 4 said yes to friends and neighbors who stopped at our home before hitting the dumpster with their discards. One too many yeses now became a burden as my parents tried to stuff the essentials into our Volkswagen Rabbit. Since there wasn't enough money for movers or even a moving truck, all our stuff had to fit into the Rabbit. The day of our move, my parents did what any desperate and overwhelmed couple would do. Whatever couldn't fit into the Rabbit got left behind. They laid out all the yeses over the courtyard, covering every inch of green made up of clover and weeds mixed with tiny bit of grass. My 5-year-old heart couldn't take the horror of my prized possessions. Stuffed dogs, My Little Pony figurines, my favorite dollhouse, and Life, the board game, scattered on the lawn like a blanket of trinkets at the flea market. And it was all free. A girl who I thought was my friend took my beautiful dollhouse even after I caused a scene, complete with screams and fat runaway tears. That's what I wanted, to run away from the pain of forced detachment from my most precious items. This is the problem with sentimental items. Our deepest rooted attachments to our things makes it near unbearable to part with. I experienced it at 5, and you might experience it at 50. Whether you're 5 or 50, here are some practical tips based on common situations to help ease the process of letting go of sentimental items. Scenario 1. If you want to hoard your photos to keep them for your kids and your grandkids, reasoning it doesn't take too much space, consider this. Margareta warns, your memories and your families are not always the same. She's right. Photos from your childhood might show faces and places unknown and meaningless to your family members. Margareta's practical tips include: Number 1, discarding multiples, and number 2, discarding any photo where you can't name everyone in the picture. By the time you reach the age of 65 plus, which is the age Margareta recommends Swedish Death Cleaning, you'll likely be the oldest one in your family. Any names you can't recall in photos can go straight to the shredder. Marie's approach is guided by joy. She recommends: Number 1, removing all photos from albums to make a decision on them one by one. Number 2, keeping ones that inspire joy. And number 3, limiting photos to 5 per special trip or event because that's plenty to represent the occasion. Scenario 2, keeping items because they were gifts from a loved one. Gift giving is an expression of love and appreciation for others. That's why it's difficult to part with gifts you receive because it feels like throwing away someone's love for you. If you feel any kind of guilt with discarding gifts, Marie explains that the act of giving the gift is the gift, not the gift itself. So after the item exchanges hands, the item already did its job and you no longer need to hold on to the gifts that you either don't want or don't have a use for. Margareta doesn't specifically address gifts from others, but references gifting your items to others. She gives you permission to say no, thank you, because just moving things someone does not want in their home to your house is not a good solution for anyone. And this leads perfectly to my final example. Scenario 3. Before keeping sentimental items for years and decades, ask your family which of your possessions they want. Margareta talks about a boat she kept for many years because she thought one of her kids or grandkids would want it. The boat held a lot of fun memories for her, but in the end, no one wanted it. This taught her a lesson not to hang on to things that nobody wants. Sorting through your sentimental items is the last category to tackle for a good reason. It brings to the surface emotions you keep buried most of the time. That's why tidying is a form of confrontation with yourself. Because of this, both Marie and Margareta recommend discarding sentimental items at the end of your tidying journey. And I also agree too. At the start of this video, I shared that my approach to decluttering is to start with the category of items where you have the least attachment. Decluttering is already a challenge, so why put friction and resistance first in your path? It doesn't make sense, so I don't recommend it. Before I wrap up this video, there are several other things I want to note about these two methods. Swedish Death Cleaning seems less about emotion and is more practical and methodical than the KonMari method. Margareta recommends not to hire a professional because the cost would make you want to rush through the process and you could make irrational decisions. Margareta comes across methodical. She planned in advance not to be a burden on her family and not to get in the way of them living their lives. During her own move, she cut out teeny tiny pieces of paper matching her furniture to scale to see whether her existing furniture would fit within her new home. Her approach is very conscientious and deliberate. I felt a lot of charm come across in Swedish Death Cleaning from the randomness and oftentimes ramblings of this old lady. Like when she rambles about needing to learn how to sew, sharing a random recipe, and including a poem read at her husband's funeral. And there's reference to a vegetarian dog she euthanizes named Taxes. And this is a bit of a spoiler, so hop off if you don't want to hear it. Margareta ends the book by saying, I will feel so content and happy when I have done most of this work. Maybe I can still manage to travel somewhere or buy myself flowers and invite some friends to a nice dinner to celebrate all the work done. And if I don't die, I will probably go shopping again. So if you don't die, hello consumerism? This might be tongue-in-cheek, but still a bizarre way to end the book. In contrast, the Marie Kondo method is all about emotion, with joy being the guiding factor. If you're ready to start your own decluttering journey, adopting what you've learned in this video, head to the description of this video and grab my free decluttering checklist to get started today.